welcome you today to the greatest generation in aviation celebration, to a time of glory, a time of victory, most importantly, a generation of heroes. It is that era and those bigger-than-life heroes that we honor with this incredible facility. Thanks to a dream long held by General William Lyon, that proud generation of remarkable planes, pilots, and wartime victories has been captured in this magnificent museum.
Welcome back. Well, another passion of mine is aviation, and as you just saw, that was the grand opening of the Lyon Air Museum. I have Marc Foster, who's the president of the Lyon Air Museum, with us today to tell us all about all the fun things there are to do there. Well, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Oh, you're welcome. I really like the Lyon Air Museum. I've been there a couple of times, and as I mentioned, aviation is starting to be a big part in our family. So tell me a little bit about your history and how you got involved in aviation.
Well, my personal history, I kind of started off like most kids do in junior high and high school, motorcycles and cars and all that neat stuff, and had a friend who introduced me to airplanes, so started hanging out at a place out in the Inland Empire, and it was vintage airplanes, and so I started learning more and more and seeing things like the Baba Black Sheep TV series and the planes that actually were filmed for that show. We're out there in Chino. It got me pretty excited, and so I started volunteering at a museum, got into aircraft restoration, did a little bit of the college thing and kept doing more aircraft restoration, then got into management, and before I knew it, I was flying and working on airplanes and managing things and doing air shows and blah, blah, blah. And it was a lot of fun.
Right, so you had a lot of history there, and so your love of aviation brought you to the Lyon Air Museum.
It did. It started off with the physical flying part that I was attracted to, but then when I started meeting all the people, particularly the veterans who had flown in the military service and so forth, that's where my passion started to shift and started taking on more of the historical side of it. Okay,
and so tell me a little bit about the museum itself.
Well, the museum was founded by General William Lyon, and General Lyon was, he wanted to be it's kind of funny, he wanted to be a Navy pilot in World War II, and he didn't pass the physical for the naval, to be a naval aviator, which is kind of funny, deviated septum. Got it fixed, went on to be a civilian flight instructor training, get this, Navy pilots.
Oh, funny.
And so that was kind of funny. And then he was able to get picked up with the Air Force. And it turned out, the physical thing was just, it was nothing. And so he ended up, flying, at that time it was, the Army. He got commissioned and he flew a lot of missions around all over, delivering airplanes all over the world basically, and then stayed on in the Air Force Reserve. So that led him up into becoming chief of the Air Force Reserve in the 70s. So so he's stationed at the Pentagon, and and he was the highest guy in the Air Force Reserve. But his passion for aviation and also education throughout that whole journey was always there. And so as by then a home builder, he had been a home builder. He started his home building business in the 50s while he was still a reservist, and he started flying himself to different locations, and he started buying vintage airplanes. And when he got into the vintage airplanes, he thought, hey, we got to really share these with the school kids. And so that is what led to wanting to found Lyon Air Museum.
Now, when we were talking earlier, you talked a little bit about some of the aircraft that is at the museum, and you have a few planes in there?
I have a personal one, the 01 Bird Dog, which is a forward air control type airplane, a little observation airplane. But currently there's 9 airplanes parked in the museum. 2 of them are guest airplanes, one of them is mine, and the other belong to Lyon Air Museum.
Now we're showing a photo right now of kind of an overview. So tell me a little bit about what we're looking at.
Nice photo there. A couple of our great docents right there. So the B-17 Flying Fortress in the corner, it's a 4-engine World War II bomber. It's probably the definitive bomber of World War II. That's what led the, doing all the missions into Germany during that time. So it carried a lot of bombs and so forth. And then you see a couple of Duesenbergs in the foreground there, and that's part of our rotational car exhibit we can probably talk about in a bit. And then I'm not sure if the slide's going to change, but there's a wing of a B-25.
So it was over there. We're sort of going fast.
Yeah, well, that's okay. So this is a DC-3, American Airlines DC-3.
Right.
It's a late 30s design. This is a C-47, which is the same as a DC-3, but the cargo version. And so that's what you would have seen during D-Day in World War II. Black A26 Invader, that type of airplane flew in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, so through all 3 wars. And then you can probably see in the way background there's silver airplane there. That's an advanced advanced trainer World War II called a T6 Texan, and
Oh, yeah.
just about all the guys who flew any of these airplanes would have flown
Probably started in that, right?
would have flown the,
Oh, okay,
the
okay.
T6.
And you also have some other fun things.
You got some military vehicles, motorcycles, some pretty historically significant vehicles in there as well, and that really helps tell the whole story.
Okay. Okay, perfect. And then I know you said that education is super important. So start with, I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit on the docents, because when you go there, like there's some of the motorcycles. So when you go to the Lyon Air Museum, there are docents who walk around and can give you kind of a guided tour and some history on each of the items there, right? Yeah,
without the docents, you know, the airplanes and the vehicles, you know, they somewhat speak for themselves, but that's as far as it goes. We really need these guys to make it all, you know, guys and girls, to make it all work out. And highly knowledgeable in aviation history, and particularly the history of the greatest generation, which is, you know, the guys of World War II and then moving forward in the other wars. When you come in as a visitor to the museum, you have the option to walk around and on your own, but the docents are there. We have about, on our staff, about 80 volunteers, not at the same time, but they rotate. So, you know, we're open, you know, 10 to 4 daily, 7 days a week, and we have that coverage. So we'll have anywhere from, you know, 2 to 7 or 8 docents on site, you know, each day. And so people come in, they get to meet these guys, and that's really the experience you get when you get to hear the personal stories, you know, their personal stories. And I mean, they're unbelievable. And I like it when you show up at the museum. It's kind of like a chance encounter. You know, you ever go to a restaurant, you meet somebody and they're really interesting, and wow, you have a lot in common, and family ties or whatever. When you go to the museum, it kind of feels like that. You start talking to somebody and you get that real personalized experience, and they can speak to a lot of different facets of World War II. Yeah.
Okay. Now, tell me a little bit about some of the events that are over the summer as well as fall and year-round.
Yeah, well, summertime we do the car exhibit. We usually feature, you know, a theme. It's a car theme, and we're doing this one, vintage motor racing. And the reason for that is because a lot of the guys, the greatest generation guys, came back from World War II, and they had all this energy and, you know, maybe this daring, and they wanted to get into something interesting, so they took on the automotive, you know, like racing, and it really developed with a lot of the guys using the technologies from the aircraft, using, you know, of course some of the pilots and the mechanics who worked on the planes ended up doing teams and so forth. So we just want to tell that story as well, and it gives just a little something different when you go to the museum, see something a little different, brings everybody together.
Right, and then you also, sometimes you bring the planes out on the line, right?
Yeah, we do the history on the flight line days. We usually do about 4 a year of those, and we have visiting airplanes. They come in from all over Southern California. They're mostly our friends, and they usually have, you know, let's say a dozen or 2 dozen. It looks like there's some pictures there.
Yeah.
And the neat part about that is the pilots usually hang around on the flight lines. It's just for the middle of the day, and they hang around, and people can come up and talk to them about their airplanes, and the pilots are always really excited. You know, pilots and air crews are excited to share their stories.
Well, you don't get to do that often, really, anywhere. So I think this is a really great opportunity. So if people want more information, they can certainly go to your website. Is that lyonairmuseum.org?
You have it.
Okay,
and that's
perfect.
Lyon.
Right, lyonairmuseum.org.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. This is very great. Thank you so much
well,
for
thank
all
you.
the information.
It's a lot of fun. We could talk about it all day.
I know we could. I know we could. And they're telling me, okay, time to wrap it up. So I do appreciate it, and maybe we can have you back again, or we can come on site.
Yeah, that would be great. Come out and go flying with us.
I would love to. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So don't forget, if you want to see some vintage aircraft or learn all about the history of aviation, you can go to the Lyon Air Museum. And if you want more information, that's the Lyon Air Museum with a Y.org. We'll be right back after this.